Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and economic growth and opportunity across America. This week, I am joined by the LA Times 2023 Inspirational Woman nominee, Lina Lumme. Lina is the CEO of the Youth Center, a nonprofit that has transformed the lives of thousands of children through their collaborative social, educational, and recreational programs. Lina candidly talks about her 2003 journey to immigrate to the United States from Russia, when she arrived 8 months pregnant, homeless, and with only $100 in her pocket. She shares her touching testimony of being connected at that time of desperation with the Precious Life Shelter, a Southern California-based nonprofit that provides residential and supportive services for homeless pregnant women. Through their support and her determination and hard work, she forged a path from being homeless to eventually becoming the CEO of the Youth Center. We discuss the mission and programs of the Youth Center, her leadership philosophy, and how mentors play an important role and can truly impact someone's life. She explained that through merit, achievement, and success, her organization builds donor confidence, which provides the track record and credibility to raise money to maintain and advance the mission. At the end, I asked Lina if she believed that today's youth are prepared and can they still achieve the American dream. Her answer was informed and insightful and provides an important data point as we all strive to create the conditions for success for our youth. I hope you enjoy. Good afternoon, Lina. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. So, Lina, you and I have we've known each other for quite a while, and probably around 2005 time period. I got involved with the organization that you're now the CEO at, the Youth Center. A lot of great work being done there, and and through that process, a lot of people in my family have been a big benefactor, and so we're super appreciative. I just wanted to kind of start the interview by congratulating you. I see, over this about 20 years of time period that, we've been kind of going through stuff. And I noticed that you were just recently recognized as one of the 2023 Inspirational Women, and which is very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, congratulations. And then, I was part of your Youth Center unveiling of your new building. So congratulations to you and your board and all of your people that made that happen.
It took an army.
Yeah.
Can I say an army?
You could.
It took a village.
It definitely took a village. Well, it was, it was a great, really a great milestone for the organization, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But, Lina, what I thought would be helpful is to get a kind of an opportunity for the listeners to kind of hear about your story. I think there is a tremendous amount of inspiration and where you started out and kind of where you're at now. And I was just wondering if you might be able to kind of lay that out for us.
Absolutely. I came to United States by buying one-way ticket because the life back in Russia didn't plan out the way I wanted to be. And it was great. I got my master's degree. I started the marriage agency out of all the businesses. That was the business that attracted me. And I did what I did well and then didn't work out. I guess the way I could just say that I hit the rock bottom. And my mom raised me up to where she always pushed me. She said, you need to be good at everything. And I kind of always wanted to be the best. It doesn't matter what I've done. I wanted to do everything the best. So I was good at everything. And then I got into a relationship, and that kind of got destroyed because of the gambling problems. and mafia got involved, and it was bad. So when I'm talking about rock bottom, I was on the bottom. So I did went to my mom, and I did say that I arranged the placement in America. That was not true. And I asked her to get me money to buy a one-way ticket because everything else was perfectly planned. That was a big lie because, when I was watching movies in Russia, I always see that, hey, if they have a problem, they call 911 and they will say, hey, what's your emergency? And boom, you get help. And wasn't quite the same, but that was my plan. So when I landed at LAX with my little suitcase, and I was 8.5 months pregnant at that time, I went and I bought the calling card and went to the phones and, called 911. And of course, somebody answered and I said, it's 911, what can I help you with? And I did tell them that I'm pregnant and I'm homeless. And they said, excuse me, ma'am, what can I help you with? And I thought, okay, that's great. They just don't understand my accent. So I kind of slowed down a little bit and I said, I am homeless and I'm pregnant. Help me. And they said, ma'am, what's your emergency? Well, 3 times trying to repeat the same thing, finally the slow reaction hit me that it's not that they don't understand me. It's not an emergency in their eyes, and I will have to figure it out. So there I was sitting in the airport, 8.5 months pregnant, and I kind of, again, hit the rock bottom because, what do you do? And I only had $100 in my pocket. So I was sitting and I was trying to call all the different numbers. And, in America, everybody knows Saturdays, Sundays are for vacations, for time off. And I landed on Saturday. Who knew it would be a bad timing? But by mistake, somebody had the phone number of the Los Angeles Pregnancy Service, and the volunteer's cell phone number was in the book. And she answered the phone, and that's how I ended up in Los Al. She drove me here in a shelter, and the rest was history. So my story started at the Precious Life Shelter from the ground zero.
Well, yeah. And so, Lina, talk a little bit about, after you get here, Precious Life Shelter, for the listeners, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but at the highest level, takes, young ladies that are pregnant and helps them have their baby and kind of connect into getting them off the street or whatever their emergency is, kind of gets them out there. And, being a mayor in the city for, and associated in the council for 12 years, definitely a lot of great things happen there. But I think what's been most compelling for your story is that really resonates with the community is that like you actually came into the city through that process. And I would also just kind of add that, Los Alamitos is the highest, rate per capita for nonprofits in North Orange County in Southern California. And, and it's always heartwarming to hear those stories, but it's even more heartwarming to see, what happens when somebody gets an opportunity to be helped like that. So question for you. So when, in Russia, you had went through your education, got your master's degree. I was just kind of curious, when you're in Russia, did you ever sit back and think as a kid that you would end up in America?
Nope, I didn't even know I would end up in Russia. So I was born in Tajikistan. My mom was raised in Siberia. So she went from there. She wanted to go somewhere warm. And Tajikistan is very close, like California weather. It never snows and there are lots of earthquakes, just like here. And never, ever did I imagine even moving from Tajikistan and going somewhere else. But there was a war in 1993, and my school was bombarded, and everything kind of, you had to start from the beginning. So my mom put us on the airplane once the airport was open, and she opened the map, closed her eyes, pointed the finger, and that's where we relocated. So it was a lot of starting from the beginning again. Did I imagine going anytime into Los Angeles to U.S.? No, not in the wildest dream. I didn't even speak English.
Right. So when you get here, you hook up into the youth center to Precious Life. That organization, knows what they're doing. And talk a little bit about your experience that first day, that first week, if you can remember back there, and just so people get kind of an idea of the foundation of your start of your American dream.
Absolutely. I remember walking through the door because that volunteer who answered the phone drove me and picked me up, and somebody in the office said, "Okay, you can go now, and we will take care of her from now on." And they asked me to fill up the papers, and once I filled up everything, they said, "Okay, let me show you to your room." And they took me upstairs, and there was 3 rooms, 2 beds in each room, and they showed me, "This is your bed, and this is your closet." They gave me the key, and I remember they gave me the starter kit with toothpaste and toothbrush, and I cried, and I thought, "Oh God,
Yeah,
I will be okay." You know, just that toothbrush and toothpaste just made me feel like it's hope and I'm going to be okay, because obviously my 911 call didn't work out. So I thought, okay, this is it. This is my new beginning. I can make it happen. And for 30 days you're in a room and they ask you to do different things and you have to be productive, and that wasn't hard for me because my mom pushed me to be the best. So I followed the rules. And I remember again, when I moved to my independent housing at the Precious Life Shelter, and my daughter at that time was, I think she was 2 months, 3 months, and it was Christmas time. And again, during the Christmas, a lot of supporters donate, help the shelters, but they just don't realize how much it makes a difference. And I remember for Christmas, I always wanted to have a walker, like the CD, walker player, CD player, and I wanted to have Backstreet Boys, and I got it. And I wanted to have warm pajamas. So here I am sitting in the bathroom. I changed into my pajamas. I put my little CD with Backstreet Boys blasting, and I again was crying because that was like, again, the next step. I felt like, you know what? Yes, I will definitely make it.
Yeah. When the conditions when people get into the shelter, how long do they give you to get back on your feet and to establish yourself, and so that you can kind of get your grounding where you need to, so you can move forward?
I think every case is unique, but general rule, you have 30 days from, they call it emergency housing, to get your act together. Either it's a job or the tests that needs to be done. And then you get moved to transitional housing. And transitional housing, you could stay there. It's a little bit bigger house, same location. You could stay there until your baby's 2 months. And then after that, you can apply to leave in the independent. It's like a little mini 1-bedroom apartment that you could just leave there with your baby until the baby's 2. And that's where I was until the baby was 2, until I was ready to go. And by that time, I was ready to go. I wasn't ready to move to the same Los Alamitos because California is very expensive, but I was able to move close enough where I can afford it, and came back to the community.
A little bit similar. So, other charities in town, just to kind of connect the net that's in place, is, I'm involved with Casa Youth Shelter, and they deal with youth 12 to 18. Same type of thing, an emergency, youth shelter. So they take them off the street, give them a room until they can get their bearings. But the thing that I thought was interesting about Precious Life is when you say they want you to get useful. And I love the leadership of Precious Life. And it's a combination of pure love and tough love, because you have to, they have to set boundaries. One of the things that I noticed as a mayor in the city, though, is that I would notice the companies and the businesses in town would employ. Talk about when you had to be active, they kind of wanted you to get a job, and can you talk about that process and kind of where you ended up?
Absolutely. So when I landed, I was 8.5 months pregnant. So there's no hope for me getting the job. Right. At that age, I was, a little big at that moment, but I wanted to get a job, and I did. I was trying to, Precious Life shelter helps you to make your resume. Again, in Russia, we don't really have resumes at that time. It's, so I was trying to make something in, and I put my education and everything. But anywhere I was dropping my resume, they would always say you're overqualified, because I was applying for entry positions or just something part-time. And everybody declined me. So my very first job, I walked into Mustard's, and because there was a sign, we're hiring, little hot dog shop that smelled like fast food, but great owners. And they hired me, and I worked there for maybe in days, 35, 40 days. And every day I wanted to get a new job, not because I don't like Mustard's, but just don't see myself working in the fast food industry. And that's when I took my resume, walked into the newspaper, because I felt that this is the job that I want. And again, they said, well, you don't have no experience in the newspaper business. And at that time, it was Pat and Molly Kavanagh. They owned the newspaper. And I said, hire me. Don't pay me. Just give me a chance. And they did. And I stayed there for quite a long time. So that was my first job, just taking a risk and trying to prove to people that I am good. I will earn every penny that you give me, but it's hard to prove yourself when there is nothing on the little paper called resume.
Yeah, the thing of a mosaic of a community, for Los Alamitos was charities, definitely great schools, but like you said, the newspaper. I think especially before the digital age, I'd say a lot of, I think a community paper helps inform, a lot of the stuff before I got active in the city, you would see stuff like that. And, your story of them helping you and kind of getting that start, and there's, I did an interview a while ago now, but with Laura Herzog, she started at the News Enterprise. So they, News Enterprise as a local paper in North Orange County definitely does its job too. Not only just within journalism, but helping out folks. Precious Life. What was really important about that whole story was, I think that shows you like what you talk about is like ground zero. Here we are now, many years later, you're the CEO of, the Youth Center, being able to do all these great things. And so I want to talk a little bit about your transition to the Youth Center. As we sit here today, about 19 years that you've been with the Youth Center. And it's funny when you talk about not being fully qualified, but you had a master's degree, you found your groove very quickly in that versus, a food establishment. But talk about when you got into the Youth Center and, what did you see there? And was it clear that you had a future there? Did you ever think you'd be the CEO?
I didn't walk in the Youth Center when I got a job, and I did not know the Youth Center existed. Because while I was at Precious Life Shelter, the executive director would take me along to different events, and she would say, please share your success story, because by that time I wasn't a loser. I was able to hold a job, and I was a mom.
Yeah.
So I was able to share my story. And during one of those events, the executive director of the Youth Center, the former executive director, approached me and introduced himself. And that's kind of how it started. And he started watching me and then offered me a job. And I declined it because I was pretty happy at the newspaper. And I wanted to go all the way in, though they did say you have to sell advertising. And I don't sell, I give. So that was kind of like, okay, maybe this is not the job for me. But then when Tom Stretz brought his wife, and she told me about the job. And
Tom is the executive director we're talking about. Great guy in the community. Everybody knows him. Did a great job starting that.
Absolutely, yes. And I couldn't say no to her.
No one
So
can.
I just said, okay. And at that time, I was thinking about my daughter. My daughter was 6 months old at that time. And I thought, you know what, that might be good, working with kids and having her by my side. And Tom did say that he wanted to retire. And he said, I'll help you. I'll help you to know everything you need to be to grow in that profession. And that's really how it started. I was willing to learn.
The thing that I've learned about nonprofits is there's always a lot to learn, but it's also a very brutal atmosphere sometimes to be the executive director, the person in the middle. I think it's in any charity. I'm in DC. I'm involved with nonprofits and charities, so it's not unique to Southern California. But you have the service that you provide, which is very visible to the community. And if it's not going well, the community knows. They find out through, because, the community stays close. At the Casa Youth Shelter, on our board over there, we always have the police chief because there's stuff that happens that, you need to be able to have kind of some inside help from the city that can help and understand different perspectives. But I would say with that visibility and scrutiny moving up through, I watched it, and this is probably where you and I started to get connected in about 2005 time period. And, and I didn't know the details of the executive director getting ready to move on, but I did notice in a lot of the events at the center, you were moving up in your standing and the things that you were doing. And, towards the end, when the job appeared to be available. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because the story that I remember was when that job did come up, the board kind of put something out. It is hard to hire executive CEOs or executive directors for charities. But one of the things is there was a tremendous response of people that kind of thought that would be a good job to have because at this point, grown pretty well as an organization. Talk about that process that you went through.
So from day one, since I started working at the youth center, I asked Tom to train me, and I wanted to learn more. So every time he did something, I was right there, and I was so nosy, and I would say, show me how. And then I would tell him, let me do it by myself. And I challenged him to do things. And by the year 4, I could run the youth center with my eyes closed because he let me have it. And the cool part about his opportunities to train me, he was okay for me to fail and learn rather than give me an answer. So he could say, sure, it's a great idea. Let's try and see. And that's how really I tried new ideas. And that's why what made me so strong when I became executive director, I've tried it already before. So I knew that, yes, some ideas might fail, but some will not. So by the year 4, when I knew the executive director would be retiring in a year, I knew it wasn't enough for me, that I didn't have enough experience. So again, I went to Tom and I asked him, help me through the interview process, help me to establish myself as an executive director because I've never been one. And looking at the history of the youth center, and you see this gentleman who ran for 17 years this beautiful organization, who is 65, and I'm in my 20s with an accent saying, hey, pick me. Yeah. I know how to run it. So I know the board at that time didn't look at me seriously. They knew I'm a young gal who maybe knows her job, but they didn't see me as this established executive director. So I had help from the chiefs and everybody who just helped me to interview. And I knew I got this at that time. And of course, when the search started for executive directors, everybody wants the job, I guess. There was about 260 applicants. Yep. And it was wind out to 50. And then I barely got in the 50. And of course, a lot of them had they were executive directors, and they brought 12 to interview, and I was in the top 3, but I didn't get it. And I remember my daughter was sick at that time. She was 5 or 6 years old. So I said, you know what, let me take you for a haircut. So we just got her haircut, and here we went. We went outside. My phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and they said, you're great, but you're going to learn so much from that new person. And gosh, my dreams crashed. Oh. And I was thinking, no, I don't want to answer the phone one more minute. I am ready. And I think the stubborn part in me was not settling for this. But I thought, I'm going to look for a new job. This is not okay, because I knew I could do it. And I slept on it. And of course, the next day when I came in, the person who was offered the job withdrew her application. So here was number 3 and number 2. And at that time, I had nothing to lose. And you know what I learned now that I know, you want to be authentic. You want to tell people who you are. There is no hiding. And I think that was my very first being me authentic when I went to the board interview with the entire board and I told them everything I think about them, how dysfunctional they were and how I could fix things. And they voted and they picked me. And of course, still, it wasn't the victory at that point.
Yeah.
I still had to prove them. So for the first year, they had to watch me, how I run the center, how I work with my staff, how we improve things. And I made them a believers. They support me now. They back me up. They are on an adventure with me. But it took time to prove. Nobody gave me just, here you go.
Right.
You're the it. You have to prove it.
For the listeners, talk a little bit from your perspective of the Youth Center. What is the Youth Center for people that might be outside of Southern California? What's the service that it provides, and some of the major programs that you've not only you but the whole organization has put together?
Absolutely. The Youth Center is the oldest nonprofit in Los Al. We serve 26 different cities and about 3,500 children. And it started 1952 with a group of parents that wanted to keep kids off the streets. And really, that was one mission: keep the kids safe and provide them opportunities that they wouldn't have on the streets. That was how the nonprofit started. And with time, they added summer programming and music education and leadership academy to empower the kids to be the best they could be. And the Youth Center is awesome because we do so much for those kiddos, and you see them when they're 5, when they're 6, and then they come back. And now I feel old because they bring their kids now and enroll them in the program. So the Youth Center, the way I look at it, is a center of the community for kids where they can come, they could be who they are, they can make friends for a lifetime. It's hard to make friends nowadays. It's easy to make friends at the Youth Center. And what we're trying to always add in any programming that we offer is the element of learning. We want the kids to learn. They don't like learning much, but if they don't know they're learning, they do pretty great jobs. So we add in that learning opportunities in everything we do. And it's awesome to see the kids and getting their spark and being passionate about different areas or feeling good about themselves. So this is what the Youth Center, just making the kids, helping the kids to be the best they can be and helping them find the place they belong.
You know, the Youth Center, you talk about the 26 cities, you know, the area, you know, Los Alamitos, Seal Beach, you know, kind of ground zero where this is at, pretty affluent place. You know, definitely as you get outside of that parameter, you know, there's a lot of areas of opportunity. And I what I've always liked about the Youth Center was didn't matter where you came from. It was equal. And it was, I think, also interesting is I won't say it's as dramatic as the Youth Center and a place to go to be safe, but I think there's a mix of kids that I'd be interested in your take on this, is that there's kids that really, you know, their parents, or maybe they're with a single parent and their parent, you know, needs to work, and the kids, when they get out of school, they need a place to go. So when we say keep them off the streets, it's that. And then during the summer, it would be, you know, parents still got to work and the kids need to be, you know, gainfully employed. We learned about latchkey kids in the 70s and early 80s that didn't work out too well. And I think that, you know, I if you would just talk a little bit about maybe the, you know, kids, because with that, I think, and I think where I'm going with this is they're, you know, the kids that kind of get involved aren't always happy-go-lucky. And when you get a mix of happy-go-lucky and hard life, you do have a situation to deal with. What's your view of that?
It's absolutely correct. We're open to everybody. We're close to military base, so we have a lot of military families. But also, if we're looking at our clientele, life can bring you some interesting things. And we see kids come from broken families. I don't call it broken. They're not perfect. They're not healthy. You have kids that have parents that are struggling with medical conditions. So there is so many different reasons of why they're not doing well. Or usually we serve elementary, middle school kids. And at that time, your parents they made it to a full-time job, but they not quite make it. So they are working hours plus more to pay their rent, to put the food on the table. And it's hard for them to be home because they're quite there by high school. They're already getting promotion and getting a little bit more. But at that age, it's hard for parents to be there for the kids. And nowadays with electronics and not so stable, safe neighborhoods, some parents are afraid to let their kids go play outside. And that's why I feel like, yes, we keep them off the streets because we give them an opportunity to be in a safe place. But we do put them right back in the streets so they could play games and experience and learn and nature explore and things, so they could learn all those basic life skills.
Yeah, no, I think that, that's something, like I said, the feedback that I used to get in the community was, you guys take everybody. And then, it's interesting, and I'm sure it may come across a little bit in this interview, but, you're a super nice person, but you can be pretty hardcore too from knowing how to keep order. And I think that, for kids, and I'm a parent of 3, and you definitely need to kind of balance that because, the kids will find a weakness and exploit it too. So talk to me a little bit about, you had Tom Stretz, who was the executive director, as your mentor. Now you get into the job. You're trying to look across all of the different nonprofits in Orange County, Los Angeles. We're right next to Long Beach and LA County. Talk about mentoring that you might have found outside of that. I know you and I have talked off mic that, like Fieldstone and, as an organization, is that a good example of maybe how once you're at the level of CEO, you were able to find mentors that kind of help you kind of cross-train?
I have to have mentors all the time in my life. I can't do without them. And I did go to Wells Fargo, a new executive directors institute, where it really teaches you how to establish yourself. That was a big help. And Fieldstone leadership teaches you how to work with your board and how to survive. You're talking about executive director, ED, my husband calls it emotionally disturbed, because I do at times get emotionally disturbed. And the nonprofit world, you don't have departments. You are it. So you have to solve the problem, and you can't be good at everything. And that's where I learned to surround myself with people who can help me in different areas. And if I don't know something, I'm going to find somebody who does. And I think that's the reason why I've been successful at what we do with a little nonprofit that grew now. But it just helps me in life. If I don't know something, I am not afraid to ask for help. Some people do. And for the nonprofit, I'm not afraid to ask for money because I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for kids. And that's what I have. I will have the pictures of kids in my office on my desk. And I always look at their faces, and I do it for them. And that makes it so much easier.
Yeah. No, and you're really good at that, by the way. So, talk a little bit about meritocracy and establishing yourself. There's no doubt you're doing it for the kids, but I think, you've talked about mentoring. You talked about, being able to win over the board. Part of the show, we look at credentials and try to see, hey, what are some of the things that were there? And it's clear education kind of helped give you a credential to be able to be, quote, qualified. Your drive and your, internally, what is you is really a big part of your success. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about things that you can earn and certificates and things. And, I went to a lot of ceremonies with the youth center, and I remember a lot of community awards. And just to kind of name off a few, the Lifetime Achievement Awards. You've had every 15 minutes program where every 15 minutes, that's the drunk driving, program that really kind of talks about how important it is at the high school level. In the PTA Council Honorary Service Award. And then, a part that I always used to get into your legislative recognitions, being able to kind of go through. And I think, the one thing that I would say with the local electeds, they really realize both at the congressional level and at the state assembly and state senate and county supervisor, they definitely have gotten through to be very good partners from my perspective. And I was just kind of curious, anything that kind of comes to mind, because I think when the community sees that these people who are really important to us as citizens, we voted for them, to see them recognizing charities and nonprofits and leadership in your case. Any examples or any thing that might be interesting for the listeners?
Absolutely. It's easy to get awards when you make a difference for a living. And sometimes when I get an award, I kind of not feeling great about it because it's really not my achievement, because my job is working together with a team. So it's really hard to accept something just individually when we worked, all of us, so hard to achieve something. But the one recognition that was very remarkable, I think, when President Obama sent us the recognition for serving the kids in our little Los Alamitos, California. So that was huge. They sent not only the recognition letter, but the photos of their kids too, with their dogs. And it was awesome, just knowing that here I am in a little town serving a little nonprofit, and even the president himself recognized the work that we do. So that was special. And every day when I go to work and I work with my team, I just want to do the best for kids. And I think the recognition follows it naturally. And people nominate me for doing just what I do. I like helping people because somebody helped me, and it feels great. My health is better because of that.
Yeah. No, and I guess where I was going to is my wife and I support a lot of different organizations, and, I'm embedded in a lot of them too. So, we like to protect our investments by making sure the money goes to the right thing. But I will say that when we pull other people in, and as a donor pulling other people in, it's a little bit different than when you do it. You kind of have to point to the credentials of the organization because they don't know you. They don't know what your motives are. They don't know how successful your services are in the community. And I again, back to credentialing, as I know I've heard you say this too. These awards aren't on your behalf; it's your organization. But I would just say I think too, it's really important for because it takes money to make those organizations work. It's not like you guys are out selling products and then getting money. It's like
right.
You're selling that, hey, we're doing a good service. We need support. And so, just pivoting a little bit, I wanted to talk a little bit about your leadership and your leadership style. And this would probably be more of a discussion and a messaging to maybe other people that manage nonprofits. Or that would think about wanting to do that. What I notice in my experience is that you're unique. You're a younger person that worked into being in a leadership role fairly early. I'm starting to see that a lot right now. But in my day when I started, it was the Tom Straths. It was the people that gave out their blood, sweat, and tears. Mildred, who started Casa Youth Shelter, was 65 and bought a home to start the Casa Youth Shelter and got rid of her home and said, "I'm just going to live here." And so that type of leadership style showed leaders all in at all costs. The next generation that's coming through, they're it's a mix of people that started from the beginning and worked their way in like you have, or open, and that you're one of 160 or 200 applicants for a job. And I was just kind of curious, like from your perspective, and again, this is not to say it's the way everybody should be, but you've been able to make it. What would you say would be some of the leadership principles that you think are important in an executive director in the way that you kind of carry yourself in the community?
I believe you have to include your team in everything you do. And you have to be able to do things that you're asking of them. So I never put myself at the top and saying, I'm the boss, though they do call me the boss lady in the office. But I always work with them together. I celebrate their successes. I check on them just to make sure I am supportive enough for them, for their jobs that they're doing, so I can help them to feel good about what they're doing. So it's not working top driven. It's working together as a team, working together with my board, working together with my staff, working together with donors and supporters, and being transparent and honest about the work that you do, setting up the expectations and checking in halfway through the project and celebrating the good work that you do. So it's really easy to be the leader when you know what you're doing, you give them support, and then you party. It's a win-win. And then you do it all over again. You set the goals, you check halfway, you celebrate. And that's been very successful to me as a leader, to see my awesome staff and the board members and the chairs of setting their goals, accomplishing it, and feeling really great about themselves. So it's a simple but win-win leadership style.
So, question for you: you not only you're a certain type of leader within the youth center and within nonprofits, but another thing that I think is kind of interesting about you, the way you carry yourself, is you also serve on a lot of boards. So not only are you sitting back and trying to be a good executive director or CEO or president to your board, which you know what it's like to be in the seat, tough seat to be in. Sometimes when you're on the board, being a board member myself on a lot of boards, it's a composite of a lot of different people. And I would think that being on a board, being an executive director would be a pretty important voice to the rest of the board to have an appreciation. So that, when you get into kind of groupthink on things that are going on, there's a little bit of empathy for the role. Talk about the organizations, that you're on the board, because I'll just say the one that it's obvious because we were talking about in the beginning, Precious Life. You went to go and give back, which I think, is awesome. But, you're also very involved in the community in different ways. And can you talk about some of your other involvement on some of the boards?
Absolutely. I think when I was just starting working for the youth center and I saw my previous executive director was involved in Rotary, and he would be on the different boards. And I thought, when do you have time? It just didn't make sense to me. And as he kind of got me involved in a little bit of everything, he introduced me to the Rotary. And as I started working and helping on more projects, it felt like the more I was involved, the more time I had, the more connections and friendships I got. And that's what really drives me every day. I don't like working alone. I love to collaborate. I love to support my other executive directors because their job is hard. And usually when you go to different events, you will see, they will say, yes, here's politicians, let's applaud them. And here's the city officials. And nobody ever acknowledges executive directors. So during my events, I always go, if your executive director stand up, let me give you a round of applause, because that's the work. That's an amazing work that they do that doesn't get recognized as much as it should be, in my opinion. But I love working with Precious Life Shelter, looking at everything I've done as a resident in there and going back in the leadership board, just seeing what you could do to make a difference. And I know when I graduated Precious Life Shelter, it was harder for me to find a place of my own because it was expensive. So I was advocating for it with the board members, and I wasn't on the board yet. I was just telling that you need to have something. You need to have something for the girls to go after they graduated, because they can't stay in the community, and your child is in a community, but you can't afford it. And that's when Precious Life Shelter purchased another area, another housing unit where the graduates can go with their kids and afford to live in the same community. So it's really, I love working with different nonprofits and share my wisdom that I have, that I gained, because it doesn't cost me anything. And it's great to make friends and do even a bigger impact for the community.
Yeah. Before we kind of close off on the youth center part, any big events, like if there's listeners out there that want to get involved and figure out or learn more about the youth center, I know we went to a gala just not too long ago. I got an Africa trip I got to do because of you, or at least you and Betty. But any other events or if people are interested in getting involved to support the youth center?
Absolutely. We're big on events because we like to party and we like to bring people in on celebrating our successes together with us. But we have the One Grand Project coming up in March, and that's when we ask people from anywhere, from kids to adults, to join One Grand Project so they could raise $1,000 to support the kids. We don't sell anything. We just simply ask them, ask your friends, join the One Grand Project, and that's the big one. And then we celebrate at the end of the year, and that helps us keep our doors open for the entire year. So this is a big one. And if there's anybody out there who is listening who wants to pay off our mortgage on our brand new building that we got, that would be amazing, because every penny that we would bring will go back to kids. Yeah. So we are happy in our new center that we just opened, and looking forward for new programming that we could provide for kids.
Yeah, that the building, great project. And again, great move on your part and your board to execute, and then local federal credit union. I mean, everybody jumped in like this community does. So a great story. And for my sake, because Betty will ask, any gala coming up anytime soon other than the Grand Project?
Absolutely, our Crystal Hearts Ball. We don't do gala, we do a ball because we like to dress up. It's going to be at Marconi's Museum on September 21st with classic cars and exquisite food, and all for the good cause. So we invite everybody to join us. It's a great event in an exquisite location with a mouth-watering, delicious dinner. Cannot go wrong. Yeah. So for people that definitely come to Southern California and want to do something pretty fun, that's great event. Absolutely.
Hey, as I'm getting ready to close, a big part of this show too is to talk about the American dream. And when we kind of go through, what you and I've talked about this too, is like what I'm hoping to be able to do is have a library of episodes that would be a mosaic of things that people can accomplish. And then, you could kind of pull that off the shelf and take a look and say, wow, this person here is somebody grew up, went to school in Russia, got married, got pregnant, hit rock bottom, bought a one-way ticket thinking 911 was going to save her. And then you get here and, God's will, you end up at Precious Life. And that type of story is pretty incredible. And then now, fast forward, you're the CEO of one of the biggest nonprofits in Southern California here. That to me is a little bit of the view of the American dream. But I think, a lot of different generations have different perspectives. I'm the glass half full guy. But you tap into the youth. You get to spend your a tremendous amount of your time, a tremendous amount of your summers around the youth. And I was just kind of curious from your perspective, does it look hopeless? Does it look optimistic? Is it hard to tell? What would be your perspective of what you see from kids just in general and their view of can they accomplish the things that like we've been able to do in our generations?
I think they can absolutely accomplish everything they put their mind to it. The harder part for the youth today is they're so distracted, and there is so much noise and unhappiness on news that sometimes it's hard to figure out, okay, is it really worth it? Should I really go to college? Do I need to do it? It's hard to be a kid nowadays with social media and all, but I believe that if somebody wants to accomplish something, they could do it. It's working towards it, putting the distractions away, and really breaking down their big dream, big American dream into small little bite sizes. If they want to put aside $100,000, well, put aside 100 and start there. So breaking down your big dreams, putting distractions aside, and asking people for help. Not be afraid to get the mentors and the coach and the neighbor who will vouch for you. If they want to be pilot, get the mentor who is a pilot. So not being afraid to be a kid and not be afraid to be successful. Just mentally, it's challenging right now to be successful when there's so much social media and you could see everybody else is doing things. Just slowing down, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I can do it. I believe I can do it, and I will do it, because they will.
Yeah, it's hard to tell whether it just gets disheartening, and they, like you said, the noise. I think that's that's probably the hardest part, I think, for me with kids. And I talk to a lot of parents, and their kids are just getting out of college too. I do a lot of work with veterans. So I've tried to give some hope and some path, but I think you're right. The distractions, social media, people comparing themselves to where they're at versus where they want to be, and and sometimes you realize on social media that what they see is not really truly real either. They're comparing themselves to like shadow boxing. You're just going to keep punching at the shadow, and at the end, that person that's probably highlighting a great life is probably not have the greatest life.
Exactly. And what we teach kids at our Leadership Academy during summer, because it's hard to focus. That's what I think the hardest part right now for the kids, to figure out where they're going, because, if they don't have the path, if they don't have the final goal, they wouldn't get there. So during the Leadership Academy, we ask our students to close their eyes and imagine their beautiful, successful life from everything, where you're sitting. What are you dressed? Are you dressed in Hawaiian shirt, or are you in a nice suit somewhere? Are you in the office, or you're outside? When you're coming home, do you have wife, husband next to you, and kids? And what car do you drive? So we make them visualize their dream life without putting the steps into how to get there. We just want them to be no limits. Think of your perfect life. And when they figure that out with their eyes closed, I don't know why we ask them to close their eyes, maybe to eliminate, again, the distractions. They open their eyes and we say, okay, now write it down before you forget. And now we're going to backtrack it, and we're going to write bite sizes of things that will get you to your dream. So they don't start at McDonald's job. If they want to work for the newspaper, they will get some, so it's just when it's easier for the kids, for the adults too, to follow your dream if you know where you're going.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's great advice, Lina. I really appreciate you coming on the show and really sharing your story. Very inspirational. And I think the world of everything that you're doing. And again, just thank you for taking your time to do this today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.